This video will show you how to replace the front outside door handle on a Chrysler Town & Country. This will be mounted to your front door. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Now the first thing that I want to mention, if you do intend on paint matching your handle, you want to make sure you do that before you start the process. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. We're going to start removing the master window switch. To do this, you're going to start carefully prying along this edge here. For that, I'm using a small pocket screwdriver and a plastic trim tool. I'm just going to come in at an angle here, trying to cause no damage. In this area, you're going to find you have a small locking tab, so I'm pressing in on that as I pry this up. You can see that tab there. There's a second one here, but typically it will slide up as we continue on. Now, as I roll this up, there's going to be two more tabs on the other side. This will all slide apart fairly easily. Once you do have it dislodged, we're looking along the backside. We can see that we have a large rectangular port here. We don't have to do anything with that, but we do have our electrical connector. Squeeze in on the locking tab and dislodge that. Of course, a quick inspection on both ends for corrosion. With that removed, let's make our way to the next switch. This is for the rear windows. For this, I'm going to use the same tools. We'll just carefully pry it out of place. You will have 4 locking tabs, one here, 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 and there. Small pocket screwdriver typically gets under fairly easily. Trim tool, just start prying it up. Now as we look underneath this, we can see another electrical connector. You know what to do, squeeze in on the locking tab and disconnect it. Quick inspection for corrosion, both sides. That looks good. We'll tuck that inside the door panel. Go ahead and set that aside. We're moving along towards our inside door handle next. Looking inside this area, you're going to find a small trap door. We'll use our flat blade screwdriver to pry that out of place. Just a quick inspection of that. You can set it aside. Now deep in this area, you're going to find a T20 torque screw. Go ahead and remove that. There's our mounting bolt. We'll continue on towards the grab handle next. As we move in towards the grab handle, looking deep in this area, we can see another plastic trap door. I'm going to be using an angled pick for this. I'm coming down along this area. I'll make my way under and we'll carefully pry this up. Now typically that will not fall out of place. We're just going to hold it up. Deep inside this area, we have another T20 torque screw to be removed. Let's go ahead and remove that now. Now as we move down, typically you're going to find that you have some sort of small light here. I'm going to be removing that as well using my small pocket screwdriver. I'm just going to come right underneath this area, gently pry. We can pull that away. We do have 4 locking tabs on that, 2 on each side. Now we have a locking tab on the electrical connector. Just go ahead and squeeze that in, dislodge it. You know what to do, quick inspection. This looks good. We'll set that wiring aside temporarily. Now we're moving to the upper forward corner here. This is just another plastic panel. We're going to start dislodging this using our plastic trim tool. Pry that right out of place. Typically you can also do that by hand if necessary. Quick inspection of the backside, we can see our locking tabs. We'll set this aside. Now we're going to start separating the door panel from the door itself. I'm continuing with my plastic trim tool. There's going to be several push clips holding this door panel up against the door, so we're going to have to carefully pry it away from the door. When doing so, just be careful not to break the plastic door panel, and I'm using a plastic trim tool so I don't scratch my paint. Typically when I do this, I like to start along the bottom and I'll make my way up along each side. Now if you find that the door panel is completely squeezed up against the door, you may need to use something else that's a little skinnier, such as a pocket screwdriver. As I mentioned, just be careful not to scratch up your paint. Now that I have it broken free, we're going to have to take hold of this. We'll lift it up away from where the door lock knob is. When you do pull it away, just keep in mind you will have a cable for your inside door handle. Now after we have the door panel pulled away far enough, we can start removing that release cable from the inside door handle. As far as the cable is concerned, I'm going to be using some pliers. The cable itself will have 2 locking tabs that I need to squeeze on. I'm going to show you those as soon as I have this apart. I'm squeezing in. I'll slide the cable out. Now the cable itself is going to pull through this slot, and then we can remove it from the handle. Now looking at this, right where my fingers are, you can see the two locking tabs. I squeezed those two in, and then I slid it back just as you saw. A quick inspection of the cable, I can see there's no damage. We can set this door panel aside. Now that we have the door panel out of the way, as we look towards where our door lock knob comes down, you're going to find that you have a circular port. It does have a cover, can easily be removed. We'll just take hold of this area and start pulling it away. We'll rest this down. Now we're going to make our way up inside this area so we can gain access to two rods leading to the outside door handle and lock. So now for my first rod, I can see that I do have a yellow locking tab here, and I'm using an angled pick. I like to use the angled pick, first of all, because it's long enough I can reach inside. Secondly, because I want to grab onto this tab and I'm going to start pulling it. As we remove that from the rod, now the rod should be unlocked from the handle and we can slide the handle out of place. A quick inspection of that rod, we're going to continue on to the next rod. This is all the way towards where the lock would be. Now for this next rod, it's exactly the same process. Just take hold of the locking tab, we're going to pull it away from the rod, unlocking it from the lock assembly, and we should be able to pull that rod out as well. That rod looks good. After removing each of those two rods, we're going to continue on to our three pieces of mounting hardware. Now, two of them are fairly easy to see. We have one out in the open here. As we move towards where that door handle and lock cylinder are, in between the lock cylinder and the door handle itself, you're going to find that you can see an 8mm bolt here, and there's one that you can't see directly above it. They are all 8mm mounting bolts. Go ahead and remove all three of them so we can remove the handle assembly. Now, since that screw can be fairly difficult to gain access to, I want to try to take hold of it and pull it out. I'm going to be using a magnet. I'm going to go down and through this area along the window. Obviously, I want to be very careful not to cause any damage to my window. Now sometimes that comes out easier than other times. Just a quick inspection of that. Let's continue on to the other two. All of these mounting screws should look the same. Now I have that as loose as I can get it here. I'm just going to carefully reach up inside, attempt to take hold of that screw so I can remove it. There's that one. Okay, that's all of the hardware. Now we're making our way to the outside of the door so we can start removing this handle. When we do remove the handle, we're going to have to pull out on the handle itself, which would make this in the open position. We need to try to turn this lever right along this area here so it makes its way down and underneath the door as we slide this out. Now from along the outside of the door, we'll carefully take hold of this. I'm holding onto the bezel with the lock cylinder. As I mentioned before, I'm going to pull on the handle, essentially like I'm opening the door. Now I have to start rolling this out of position from inside of the door. We can roll it out from this area as well. All right, and there's that. Now we need to remove the lock cylinder from the lock cylinder bezel. That's fairly simple. Just go ahead and look from the back side here. We're going to take hold of the lock cylinder, give it a little wiggle, and slide it up and out of position. Of course, a thorough inspection of that, confirming that it is reusable. And there's our handle. Let's have a quick look at our door. We want to, of course, make sure we clean and inspect the mounting area. For this, I'm using a clean rag. I like to use some glass cleaner. We're essentially just making sure nothing's rotted, damaged, or weak. Everything looks good here. Now that we finished our cleaning, let's have a quick look at our brand new door handle. We're looking from what would be the inboard side. Now you can see that it came with 3 new pieces of hardware. Go ahead and remove all 3 pieces. We're using a Phillips head. Now, as you can tell, the two screws that were next to each other are a different type of screw than the first. That's important to note during the installation process. Now at this point, let's continue on with our lock cylinder. Now, as far as our lock cylinder is concerned, this will be installed from what would be the back side. You can see exactly where the mounting bolt ports would be. Slide that lock cylinder in, press it in until it's flush. Now, we're not continuing on to our two screws until we have this installed in the door, of course, so that's where we're going next. As we start bringing this over, during the removal process, you remember I had told you that we have to hold onto the bezel, pull on the handle that's going to swing this down so we can slide it through this area. That's exactly what I'm doing here. Now it's time for installation of the brand new door handle. When we go to bring this in position, we're going to start with this area here that's going to slide through this rectangular port. As we bring the rest of it through, you remember during the removal process, I had to pull on the handle which will swing this down, so that's what we're going to have to do for the installation as well. Sliding that in. So now I'm pressing it up against the door. I want to make sure it looks as though it's flush the way that it needs to be. I can tell that my door lock is still in the proper area. Let's make our way on the inside of the door for our mounting hardware. Now, as for the inboard hardware, as I mentioned for our brand new outside handle, the one screw towards what would be the front of the door looks a little different than the others. That's the one I'm starting with. It's the coarse threaded screw. Now, typically when I do something like this, I like to leave the hardware loose until I have every piece started and then I snug them up. So I'm going to continue on to the other two. Now, as far as the next two bolts, these two look exactly the same. You do not need to worry about mixing them up. These are the fine threaded bolts. Now that that bolt is started in, I'm going to repeat the process for the next one, and then we can tighten all pieces of hardware. This one's a little bit more difficult to gain access to. Okay, that one's tight. Let's go ahead and do the same for all. All three pieces of hardware are tight. Let's continue on to our two rods. Now for our two rods, I'm going to start with the one that's farthest away here. Obviously this locking tab does need to go over the rod once it presses through, so I like to pivot it up. Now we can take that rod, we'll press it into position, sliding it all the way towards the door lock cylinder. Lock it down with that plastic clip by sliding it over the rod. Now I'm just going to reach in here by hand, we'll slide that into place. I'm going to try not to block too much of the view. At this point, you can see that I am in the proper placement. Let's continue on with our plastic locking tab, swinging it over that rod. Now, once you do feel as though you have that locked in, we want to try to wiggle it out of place. You want to make sure it does not fall out while you're driving down the road. Continue on to the next rod. There we are. Lock it down. Now one last quick inspection in this area and we can continue on to our protective cover. Slide this in here. Just pressing that in. Double check to make sure it's secured all the way around. Let's get ready to install our door panel. Now when I go to install the door panel, I always like to have a quick look along the inboard side. On the inboard side, you're going to find you have several small locking tabs, and you're also going to have locating tabs. These make their way all the way around the door panel. If you were looking at the door itself, you're going to find that there's the areas for each one of those tabs. You have square notches for the locating tabs, circular ports for each one of the locking tabs, making their way around. As we bring this door panel over, we're coming up nice and high. We're going to go over this area of the door, and then we're also going to make sure that we go around our door lock knob. We also need to, of course, make sure that we reattach our door cable. With all that said, let's start bringing this over for the cable first. Now as far as the cable, we're coming inside of the door handle. There's a small slot, just as you remember during the removal process. Now we can pivot the cable over. We're coming through this slot here, and then we're going to lock it in with those two plastic locks on the cable itself. Once you feel as though you have it in the proper position, give it a wiggle, make sure it does not fall out of place. As we bring the door panel over, we have to keep in mind all the things that I mentioned, but also this cable right here, we need to make sure it goes up and over here. You can also put it inside of these mounts if you can reach inside there at the same time. There we go. So now here's where I'm coming up nice and high. I'm paying attention to this here. You can see my door lock knob. As I bring this down along the door, I'm out at an angle on the bottom there, and I'm tapping this down along the top. Before we go too far with pressing this all the way in, you do want to make sure you can gain access to your wiring harnesses inside this area. So now I have all of the wiring that I need making its way out through the corresponding ports. We have the connector for the rear windows. This is the green connector. We have the black connector with 3 wires. This is going to be for the window switch, lock switch, mirror switch. And then down here, we also have the wiring for our door courtesy light. Since I can see all that wiring, let's go ahead and line this up properly, and we're going to tap it in towards the door. Does look like I'm seated pretty well. Just take hold of the bottom of the door panel, make sure it does not fall out of place. Once you have that in place, we'll continue on with the 2 mounting screws. We have one inside where the grab handle is. We'll get that one started in by hand. Get that started in. Go ahead and snug it up. We'll protect the area with its cover. Make our way inside that inside door handle next. Got our screw. Just get that started in. Protective cover for that. Now it's time for our door courtesy lamp. We'll make sure we have it in the proper orientation. I have my locking tab on my electrical connector in the proper placement here. Press it in, audible click, light tug. Now we do have this in the proper orientation. We have the lamp up along the top, the small vent area down along the bottom. Line it up, press it in. Now it's time for the rear window switch. We'll line this up. Audible click, light tug, proper orientation, slide it down. We have our window switch panel. One electrical connector there. Proper orientation. Fully pressed in. Okay friend, we finished the installation of our front outside door handle. We've already tested the functionality prior to shutting the door, but now let's go ahead and close the door and reopen it again. Perfect. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.